Guys, it's 2024 US Open final time. Aryna Sabalenka versus Jessica Pegula. Will it be Jessica Pegula to win a Grand Slam in her first ever final, or will it be Aryna Sabalenka to finally capture that elusive US Open title? She's won 2 Australian Opens, but she's yet to win a US Open title, and she is, of course, the hardcourt queen, I think it's fair to say, on the WTA Tour right now. She is looking to repeat the result she had at Cincinnati only a few weeks ago, where she beat Jessica Pegula in straight sets 6-3, 7-5. Can Pegula come up with a game plan to combat the power of Sabalenka? We're going to break it down in detail. Before we do, though, remember to hit that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. We're going to break it down first by talking about a few little nuggets. As you can see on screen, we've teamed up with Match Row Graphics yet again. Then we're going to talk about their road to the final. Then we'll break down the form of both players as well for Pegula and also Sabalenka, looking at their year holistically, any notable wins and results. And then we will break it down tactically and strategically and ultimately give you guys my prediction. So as you can see on screen, the final is around the corner. Timings there as well for those interested. It's 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. GMT, and 10 p.m. CET. And yeah, as I said, Jessica Pegula is playing in her first ever final. She's currently number 6 in the world. Her peak was number 3 just 2 years ago, but at age 30, she would be the second oldest first-time Grand Slam champion in the Open era. If she were to win on Saturday. The oldest is actually Francesca Schiavone, who won at 33 years of age. For Sabalenka, she's 26, of course, number 2 in the world, and she has been number 1 in the past. Her coach is Anton Dubov, and for Jessica Pegula, she has Mark Knowles and Mark McLean in her corner. In terms of the head-to-head, it's 5-2 in favor of Sabalenka. And Pegula has beaten Sabalenka on hardcourt at WTA Finals in 2023, also in Cincinnati in 2020. But, I mean, the 2021 was a long time ago, and the WTA Finals, I'm not going to put too much emphasis on that match, in honesty, because towards the back end of the WTA Finals, it can be a little bit topsy-turvy. If I'm being honest, people are fatigued and they're maybe not playing at their best. But still, it shows that Pegula is at least able to beat Sabalenka, given the 5-2 head-to-head. The win predictor is saying 70% in favor of Sabalenka, which is, I think, understandable. She's won the Australian Open this year as well. She is, in my eyes, the best hardcourt player on tour at the moment. And, she's made the semi-finals in each of the last 4 years, at least at the US Open. Last year made the final, lost to Coco Gauff in 3 sets, an entertaining match. And she'll be looking to go one further against Jess Pegula in the final on Saturday. In terms of other bits to talk about, I mean, we're going to break it down tactically a bit later, so I'll wait to give my thoughts on that, but I think there could be a mental aspect involved as well, and I think the crowd could play a big part if they want to. It's really the crux of the matter. In terms of their road to the final, then let's briefly break that down. So you can see here some interesting matches for both players. Pegula's only dropped the 1 set, same for Sabalenka. Sabalenka spent 8 hours and 28 minutes on court, and Jessica Pegula 9 hours and 13 minutes. So a difference of around 40 minutes or so more on court for Pegula, which isn't a massive difference. Priscilla Hon was the first match for Sabalenka, 1 hour 20 there. And then Bronzetti, straight set victory over her as well, and 1 hour and 1 minute, so very quick over Bronzetti for Sabalenka. And then Alexandrova was the one match where she dropped a set, but it was a quick match because 1 hour 42 for 3 sets is a pretty quick match. Both very powerful players, so I can imagine that, that's because of the shorter points they had. And then against Elise Mertens, it was 1 hour and 38, and Zheng Xinwen, 1 hour and 14, and then Emma Navarro, 1 hour and 33. Definitely a tough second set. She was serving at 5-3, managed to recover nicely, Emma Navarro, and take it to a tiebreaker. And then Sabalenka, though, came out clutch in that tiebreaker. For Jessica Pegula, it was pretty much straight sailing up until the semi-final, beating Rogers in a tough matchup on paper, but managed to win in straight sets, 1 hour and 24. Then Kenin again on paper looked tough, but an hour and 27 straight set victory. Then Buzes Manet beat her in an hour and 12. Schneider as well, an hour and 28, again, straight sets. And then she managed to straight set the number one player in the world in Swiatek. I mean, what a impressive win that was, beating Iga Swiatek in straight sets in an hour and 29 minutes. And then the Mukova win as well. I mean, look, 2 hours and 13 minutes. It was a really, really long match. Mukova won the first set very convincingly. She was a breakup in the second set as well. Pegula managed to recover. Mukova definitely dropped in her level. And Pegula took over, started playing some really good tennis, and managed to win in 2 hours and 13 minutes in a really, really big battle in the end. But came out on top, and it was a real good mental victory more than just a physical victory as well for Pegula, I think, that win. In terms of her form this year, Pegula's been very good. I think I wouldn't say it's been her best year generally, but it's been a pretty solid year. 76% win rate, and against top 10, it's been not too bad. Only played 3 matches against the top 10, but only the one loss to top 10 players, and 2 wins as well, which is impressive. And I think definitely an improvement on prior years. Hardcore percentage in terms of win rate is 80%, which is really good. So just shows that she really is at home on the hard courts. In terms of notable results, well, those top 10 victories came against Swiatek and Goff. Swiatek, of course, at the US Open, as you can see, the dark green rectangles are the top 10 wins. And then also in Berlin, she beat Coco Gauff, and then obviously ended up winning Berlin, beating Kalinskaya in the final. Other tournament wins came at Toronto, where she beat Anisimova in the final and then lost to Sabalenka in the Cincinnati final. So this has been a really impressive route right to the US Open. Since the Olympics, she's won, I mean, look, she's won 14 matches and only lost 1. And if she were to win the US Open, she would have won, 2 out of the 3 tournaments since the Olympics and made a final of the other. So it's been a really, really rich vein of form for her, and she'll definitely want to take that momentum going into the final and make the most of it. In terms of other notable tournaments, I mean, a few semi-finals in Charleston and San Diego, but apart from that, nothing massive this year anyway for her. In terms of, and you can see there's a gap here because she didn't play Roland Garros due to injury, and also a lot of the clay court swing. So that could also be why she's potentially a bit fresher, because yes, she was injured, but it meant she had a break, right? No Monte Carlo, sorry, not Monte Carlo, that's for the men's. No Rome, no Madrid, and no Roland Garros. And that actually might have helped her because a lot of the players, I think, when they played the Olympics, they were very fatigued. She went out early anyway, but I think they would have been fatigued, and also the transition from clay back to hard court is difficult. But I think for her, it was just a one-off to go and play. She didn't really play any other clay court tournaments apart from Charleston. For Sabalenka, 80% win rate this year, which has been impressive. I mean, she's made a lot of finals and also won some, a lot of semi-finals as well, quarterfinals. Brisbane, you can see she lost Rybakina, early doors in the season. But in terms of top 10 wins, 11 matches, 8 wins, 3 losses, and a 73% win rate, which is really good. And then on hard court, she has an 83% win rate, which is the most out of any surface for her this year. So in terms of tournament wins, she won Cincinnati and then also won the Australian Open earlier this year. You can see there, I mean, back-to-back top 10 wins. Kuchikova, Goff, Zheng, Rybakina, she won in Madrid. Ostapenko beat her in Rome. And then also Pegula and Swiatek in Cincinnati. And then Zheng also at the US Open a couple of matches ago. Some notable, tournaments as well. Rome and Madrid lost to Swiatek in the finals. And then semi-finals lost to Buzkova. And that's in the other semi-final. Some quarter-final losses to Kalinskaya, Andreeva, Vondrousova, etc. But look, I mean, it's been a good year. And as I said, on hard courts, she's been very, very good, generally speaking. Had a bit of a dip between the Bay and Miami after winning the Australian Open. But I think that's probably not surprising. Sometimes you can have a bit of a come down after a really big high like that. So people shouldn't be super surprised about it. Obviously missed Wimbledon, the Olympics. So again, like Pegula, she was injured and Sabalenka was injured. Is it a coincidence that the two players in the US Open final have had a bit of a break throughout the year because of injury? Maybe it's just a coincidence. I think for Sabalenka, it's not surprising, and also Pegula's been in good form. But at the same time, them being in good form going into it could have also been because of that. So I wouldn't underestimate the power of fatigue, to be fair, as well. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but it could have been a contributing factor. I wouldn't be surprised. And then in terms of generally in Grand Slams, you can see here Jessica Pegula has a 77% win rate, which is interesting. And from May 2023 up until the US Open, she'd only made the quarterfinals at Wimbledon in July 2023. Apart from that, no results past that, which is really interesting to see. So this is a big step in the right direction for her now. Of course, made her first semi-final, beat Mukova, and now in the final. For Sabalenka, 89% win rate. I mean, look, this is phenomenal. Since May 2023, she's made at least the quarterfinal. And in fact, the only tournament she just made the quarterfinal in was Roland Garros this year. Every other tournament, she made at least a semi-final. Roland Garros 2023, lost to Mukova in the semi-final. Jabeur at Wimbledon 2023, lost to her in the semi-final. Lost to Goff at the US Open final. And then in the Australian Open final, beat Zhang. I mean, what more is there to say? I mean, she has been the most consistent player at Grand Slams for the last 2 years. And, I have a lot of discussions with people in the comment section. Everyone's, and look, I don't have any favorite player out of pretty much anyone. My favorite player is not any of these players we're discussing. And on the WTA tour, and a lot of people will say to me, Swiatek is the most dominant player, and she's in the world number one. And I say, look, she is the most dominant player on tour because she overall tournaments, but in Grand Slams, Sabalenka is the most dominant player. She is the most consistent performer at Grand Slams, and there's the stats back it up. I mean, look how consistent she has been. It's impossible to go against that. Swiatek has only won the one hardcourt slam, and it was a while ago, in 2022, and she hasn't got past the quarterfinal stage of a hardcourt slam or a grass court slam since. So, that says something, and she's been really dominant at Roland Garros. But if you look at Sabalenka, the consistency she's shown has just been phenomenal. So, the only difference is she just hasn't been able to make that final step and really wrap up a lot of Grand Slams to kind of make it definitive, I guess you could say. In terms of tactics, well, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I think it really does come down to Sabalenka. I said that for the Navarro match, and I think the same holds true here. Pegula has a slightly different style to Navarro. She's not as much of a counterpuncher. And, I think Navarro moves a bit better than Pegula. Pegula still moves pretty well. I mean, you'd see her chasing down drop shots against Mukova. She's extremely athletic still, but I think Navarro defends better than Pegula. I think Pegula has a bit more power, though. She has a bit more firepower from the back of the court. And, I think on return as well, she's pretty solid. Serve as well, pretty solid. But I think for her, it's going to be more of a mental thing than anything. Can Pegula, how does she handle the expectation and also being in her first Grand Slam final? Do the nerves get to her at the start, or is she relaxed? The first couple of games are going to really tell us how the match is going to go, because if she starts off and she's super nervous and she goes a breakdown early, I think it could be really quick. I don't see her recovering like she did against Mukova in a final against Sabalenka. I think that's not going to happen, in my opinion. If she starts off and she holds serve, and even if she were to break Sabalenka, but she starts off solid or well, then I think we could have a very competitive match on our hands, and then it will come down to purely who plays better on the day. The crowd could play a really big part as well. I think with the mental aspect, I think they really need to get behind Pegula, and we're kind of focusing now on. I want to focus now on how Pegula is going to, or how she can win against Sabalenka, and what does she need to do. I think she needs to really tap into the crowd. I think she needs to accept that, look, the crowd could be a really big part of this match, and she needs to get them engaged, really get behind her, and that could play a big part because we've seen in the past Sabalenka not being particularly happy with the crowd. And she joked with the crowd after the Navarro match and said, "You guys are now cheering for me." But I think a lot of it is tongue in cheek, and she clearly, mentally is pretty strong, Sabalenka. But after a while, right, if the crowd is so pro Pegula, it will play on her mind a little bit. It will. So we'll see how the crowd go in terms of that aspect. But something for Pegula to definitely try and rile them up, get them behind her, put her hands up, really engage with them as well. Not sure if she'll do it. She doesn't tend to, so let's see. But it might be an advantage for her to do so. In terms of other things, I mean, look, how she handles the pressure, nerves, etc. That's all mental. In terms of tactics, it's a difficult one. I have to be honest because if you look at it from a matchup wise, I talk about serve and return, and then forehand to forehand, backhand to backhand. Okay, from the back of the court, transitioning. Like how does it all match up? Now, in the serve return dynamic, Pegula, her serve, I think her first serve is going to be quite key. She needs to make a lot of first serves, and I'll tell you why. If you watch the match against Navarro and any other player at this US Open, Sabalenka has been destroying people's second serves. I mean, she has been making them look like they are 9-year-olds serving on the other side of the court at times, and just hitting return winner after return winner. I mean, it's just it is frightening to watch at times, honestly, and it's all in her hands because she has the ability to just rush the opponent and be on the front foot straight away in the point, or even just hit a winner and just put a full stop at the end of the point because she's got that much power. And there's obviously the stat where it showed that she was hitting a forehand harder than the women and men at the US Open, at an average of 80 miles per hour, which is just phenomenal. So, but her backhand is also equally as devastating. So it doesn't really matter what you serve to. And you could actually argue that it's better to serve into her forehand return than backhand return because I think her backhand return, she's less likely to miss on the backhand return. I feel like she hits with more accuracy, especially on return. I think the forehand, it is very powerful. It can probably hurt you more, but she's also more prone to making mistakes on that side. I think Pegula needs to get her to guess on serve. She needs to really make her think about it, vary up the serve, try not to let Sabalenka get into rhythm on return where she can anticipate where the serve's going to go, and then try and just limit the second serves because I just feel the second serves are going to be a real issue for Pegula. So she's going to have to accept at times that she's going to lose some of those points, but the first serve percentage, I mean, she needs a good serving day, I think, to have a go and have a good chance, I think, in this match. In my opinion, if she doesn't have a good serving day, I find it hard for her to come win this match, in all honesty. In terms of in terms of other aspects, I think from the back of the court, if we look at it forehand to forehand and backhand to backhand and other aspects, can she utilize? What can she utilize? What does she need to do? I think she needs to try and avoid being on the back foot. And something that Navarro did quite well, and she redlined really in that second set against Sabalenka, was trying to be the one dictating the points and trying to switch and transition from neutral to attack or defense into neutral into attack as quick as you can. And that does involve taking more risk. It does. But it's a calculated risk against someone like Sabalenka because, I feel like the points can go one of two ways. Either you are passive and Sabalenka will hit a winner, or she will force you into an error, or you hit a quality enough ball that over a consistent number of shots that you're somehow staying in the rally and the point gets longer and then Sabalenka makes a mistake. Or actually, there's a third option. And the third option is where you're the one that transitions quickly into attack, and you're the one who takes the first step to being the proactive one, changing direction or trying to take control of the point, and you put Sabalenka on the back foot, and she then is forced into an error. you hit a winner into open court. Those last two scenarios are where you want to be. Right? Now, the problem with the second scenario is that to hit consistently enough quality balls consecutively against Sabalenka to stretch the point out enough to force the error is not easy. I don't know how viable it is, to be honest. I mean, if you're Swiatek, you might be able to do it for periods. Can Pegula do it? I saw her against Mukova, and I think at times she can do it. I think that's fine. And when she's confident doing it, then I get it. But as soon as she gets a chance to be on the front foot, to be the one dictating, she has to take it. I think she needs to take some risks, I think, from the back of the court. And that means changing direction first when she can and trying to be proactive, I think, with, I think what Navarro did really well, actually, was hit the ball deep. Sounds crazy to say, but she just hit with really good depth at times, and it forced Sabalenka. And Sabalenka doesn't want to give up the baseline, so if you're hitting the ball really deep, she won't back up, and that means she'll have to take it early. She'll have to get low. She'll have to time, almost a crouching backhand or forehand, and it's awkward. And you saw her make mistakes and net a few of those shots, or go wide or go long because she wasn't quite in control. So that's going to be really important for Pegula if she can do that. If she can kill her with depth, it will definitely help. She can drag her out with angles as well. That's going to be a real advantage. And she just needs to be extremely intelligent, I think, Pegula now with her tactics, make Sabalenka feel uncomfortable, try to disrupt her with different patterns of play so that Sabalenka doesn't feel like, oh, I'm getting into some sort of rhythm here. I can anticipate where Jess is going to go. Oh, yeah, I know that she's going to serve into my forehand from the due side. Oh, yeah, I can tell, okay, if I hit this ball into her backhand, I'm definitely going to get, a relatively deep backhand cross court, but it's going to be a dry backhand. No, you want her to be thinking, okay, she's on return and she's on the due side, and she's thinking, I don't know where Pegula's going to go. She's going to go down the tee. Is she going to get out wide? Is she going to hit a slice serve out wide? Is she going to hit a kick serve out wide? Is she going to hit a flat one down the tee? Where's she going to serve, for example? And then from the back of the court, she might be thinking, okay, I need to go, or I've got a short ball. Do I go, or I've got a mid-court ball. Do I go cross-court into Jess's forehand or into a backhand? Okay, fine. I'm going to go into a backhand. And then she might be thinking, oh, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to backhand. She's going to cross-court. But actually, if she goes into the backhand and Pegula's doing different things, then she might have to think, oh, hold on, Pegula might go backhand deep, or she might try and hit an angle on the backhand, or she might try and hit a slice, or in fact, she might hit a lobbed backhand, right, deeper, or she might try and be brave and go down the line with the backhand. If I'm not careful, I don't hit a clean enough forehand into out. And then it makes her think different things. It forces her to have to be more aggressive on that shot. And it means that she has to go make or break on it. And it will mean more errors potentially as well. Look, I mean, it's important that Pegula is trying different things against her. And I think that's super important. And that's where it comes down to that third option we were talking about earlier about, trying to be the one having the variation or taking the first step to being aggressive. That's going to be really important for Pegula to be the one dictating, play the match on her terms. And the other aspect is then, to try and be rock solid. And it's almost going to be difficult because you're going to have to do both. Because at times, she's not going to be able to be on the front foot because on Sabalenka's serve, for example, she's going to have moments where Sabalenka is serving really big. She's then going really big behind that first serve. And Pegula has no option but to scamp and defend and hope that Sabalenka makes a mistake. That's fine. But then there'll also be some points where actually she's able to neutralize a serve, get to neutral, right? And then it's like, okay, how solid can I stay to try and force Sabalenka into an error? So there's these different scenarios where she's going to have to tap into all three of those and really try and maximize, those points as much as possible, those opportunities, and select the right times to play different styles of points. And I think that's going to be important. It will make Sabalenka really second guess as well and have to adapt and really think about what she needs to do against against Pegula, and rather than thinking, oh, Pegula's going to play one way, or I know exactly what's going to happen with Pegula. It's going to be predictable. I can anticipate it. It's important that Sabalenka's having to really think in different ways. How does she need to approach a point? And it then has a mental effect as well, because it's mentally tiring for a player to then have to think about that as well. For Sabalenka, look, I mean, I said it earlier, I think the match is on her terms. If she serves well and she's hitting well from the back of the court, it's very difficult for Pegula. In all honesty, I find it very tough to see how Pegula combats it effectively, that is, over 2 sets, because there's not really much you can do if someone's hitting 120 mph serve down the tee and it paints the line, for example, or someone hits a big serve out wide and then hits a 80 mph forehand, cross court a meter within the baseline. There's just not really much you can do with those. For Sabalenka, she needs to keep her cool mentally, I think, is a big one for me. If the match is not going her way, she's tended to problem solve, and the results at slams obviously back that up, generally speaking. She's got through some tough matches, and she needs to show a level of maturity about knowing when to also use change ups. Because if Pegula's frustrating from the back of the court, maybe there's going to be periods where Pegula's going to be more solid from the back of the court and she's forcing errors from Sabalenka. Then Sabalenka needs to accept that, okay, that's happening. How can I change it up? And she did really well against Navarro. When she ended up losing a couple of games and she was serving at 5-3 and Navarro came back into it, she then adapted her game beautifully and used some change-ups that she's clearly been working on, and she's clearly now open to utilizing in big crunch moments. And that was the serve and volley at times, or just transitioning generally in volleying, and the drop shot. And they were super effective against a player who is extremely athletic, who has very good passing shot ability as well. And the same could be said for Pegula. So those are two tactics that she can utilize, Sabalenka, against Pegula in crunch moments, to also use as variation. And I think the slice as well is important, because Pegula is a player who likes to get over the ball. She might not slice as much herself. For Sabalenka at times, it's not a bad variation to use if she thinks is going to potentially open up a forehand for her. Then why not utilize it, right? So those are my thoughts on it. And then the serve return dynamic is interesting, because I think Sabalenka needs to be proactive on the second serve return, as she has been, being aggressive on it. And yeah, and she needs to ensure that Pegula is not able to read her serve really well. So that means also having some variation on it. And she does have it, and she's been cutting out the double faults, which is good. So let's see how she gets on. But my prediction is Sabalenka in 2 sets, in straight sets. It'd be a great win if Pegula wins, and she might even take a set. I just think with the pressure of it being a final, with the way that Sabalenka's playing, with the Cincinnati final, all of the factors, I just find it tough to pick Pegula, to be honest. But she's shown really good fight and resolve, and maybe she'll just problem solve and prove me wrong. So I'm more than happy for that to happen. Let's see how she gets on. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you in the next video.